Welcome to the Wonder of Woo podcast, where we highlight how businesses can scale profitably by serving others well. I'm Daryl Zavadny.
And I'm Ed Howie.
And this is
the Wonder of Woo. If you're a business owner investing time, money, and marketing only to be frustrated by losing customers, then this podcast is for you.
Now, Ed, every time we do this, we start off by just kind of talking about the fact that what we're talking about with serving others well is not just a feel-good thing, right? Like it's good for business, right?
It's good for business. It's good for life. It truly is the secret to scaling profitably.
Indeed. Well, so as we get started, our podcast is entitled The Wonder of Woo.
Right.
For those who are new to our community, I think it's at least wise for us to go, what the heck are you talking about?
And if you've been a part of our community from day one, just say it along with me. Winning others over and over is what WOO stands for, 3 O's. Winning others over and over. We both understand, believe, celebrate, challenge that it does take effort to win others over and over. It takes intentionality to win others over and over and over and over.
Right.
And that's what we're called to do as humans, as well as is probably one of the best business principles you can choose to adopt and own.
Yeah, I think it's such a fun contrast between the just winning somebody over. Yep. And doing it, our logo, of course, has,
3 O's.
3 O's, but they're the infinity symbol.
They are.
Obviously that, it can be done over and over and over.
And especially as we get into today's episode, I think it's good kind of to look at a financial foundation of this, to revisit the whole principle of a lifelong customer.
Sure.
A lifelong customer is a customer who will be your greatest advocate. Mm. They will be the one who will champion for you. They're the ones who generate the positive word of mouth. They're the ones who you always see their cup in that brand's cup in their hand, or their bag in their hand, or the logo on something they're wearing. I mean, those loyal customers are gold, and it's okay if I should just
do the simple math. Yeah, I think
it's simple math, and you can do this at home. Just don't write it if you're driving. Yeah. And that is that if you figure out what the average value of a typical transaction, and we're going to use food. Food is our love language. Like a $10 combo meal, and if a loyal customer using fast food. Typically, a loyal customer in fast food eats at that restaurant once a week. Index a little higher, Chick-fil-A, but
as do I.
Yeah, exactly. But so that'd be 4 times a week or 52 times a year. So 10 times 52 means that customer represents, that one transaction, that one customer we registered today represents $520
in the year.
A year. And I'm 50 years with Chick-fil-A, but 45. Yeah. But let's just say that loyalty lasts for 10 years.
Yeah, on average.
That customer at that register is worth $5,200, not the $10 combo meal that you may or may not get hot fries in, right?
Yeah.
So lifelong customers is one of the secrets to scaling profitably. It is something that you can get distracted and ignored, and especially with today's topic, the likelihood of losing focus on them is pretty high. That's why we're talking about today, right, Daryl?
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's really helpful setup. So today's title, playfully, is Private Equity at Odds with Woo. And so in my mind, I've kind of figuratively put it like, in the black corner, we have private equity, and in the silver corner, we have Woo. And so I guess the question that we're going to maybe just begin to kind of peel back the layers on is that really an accurate description? And, so I think it might be helpful even to use like almost a case study on this, right? So we've talked about Subway.
I love Subway.
Right. So I think it'd be interesting for us to look at maybe, so Subway is owned by whom? And let's maybe level set on where they are.
Let's see.
So owned by Rourke Capital.
Right.
Right. And Rourke is, I think we said $94 billion.
My understanding is they represent like $94 billion in sales throughout all the brands that they own.
And so they've got a number of brands that fall underneath that, ranging from Cheesecake Factory to, I think, Dunkin' and
Schlotzsky's,
Jimmy John's even.
Yeah, interesting. And Subway itself, depending on when you look at it, valued around $14 billion. I mean, like I think the largest number of restaurant locations of a U.S. brand throughout the world.
Yeah.
Like 37,000, something like that.
Yeah, I think 37,000.
Yeah,
they had many, many years of shuttering locations.
Yeah. But that is still, that is consequential.
Yeah. Okay. So now so we've got Rourke, kind of in the private equity corner, and that, again, we will kind of set this woo conversation, but let's kind of turn back the pages of history in our research of Subway. So, research Subway, neat story. I remember eating Subway growing up.
I know what you're going to say.
What's that?
Well, Chapel Hill?
Well, I was actually in Charlotte.
Growing up, high school.
Yeah, so I remember going to soccer practice. After soccer, I would have a foot-long meatball, 2 cookies, and, it was just my routine. And so Subway was different. It was fresh, and I loved it. Now, this was, they didn't toast subs and all of that.
Yeah.
But if you dial back even further in Subway, so Subway started in 1965, a 17-year-old kid who partnered with a doctor, a guy named Fred DeLuca, who partnered with a doctor, Dr. Peter Buck, I think is his name. He's a physicist. And he said, look, $1,000, handshake, here we go. And
I think the parent company was called like Physicians Associates or something like that.
I think it was.
The copyright one on the bag.
Right, yeah. So, so they started in Connecticut, I think, was their original location. And so this kind of fledgling brand, this idea, this grit and hard work, $1,000 and a handshake, gets to where it's now a 37,000 location, 100 countries, 20,000 franchisees. And so, the question is like, all right, so that's feels like a success, an American success story. So what I want to maybe begin to talk about is, all right, so is a relationship with private equity at odds with this idea that you introduced of having a lifelong customer? So how might we begin to dissect this Subway's situation in that context? So putting the asterisk that neither one of us are CPAs or CFOs, right?
Right. Is that my first response when we threw out this topic kind of formulated to be that they shouldn't be, because
they shouldn't be at odds.
They shouldn't be at odds with Woo if they are investing in this brand, your business, a business, because it has it's not in distress, meaning it has a solid foundation of which they want to build and scale. Mm-hmm. All right. Because logically, why would you want to invest money in an asset and then do something that, pardon my French, but would immediately piss off your customers? Mm-hmm. However, we do it all the time, right?
Sure.
Now, private equity kind of gets a bad rap.
Yeah, how so?
Well, I mean, on the negative light is that it's about money versus heart and soul. Mm-hmm. It's more about the balance sheet versus the customer joy, and that it is a race to the bottom of trying to get anything that is non-variable or non-provable out. Mm-hmm. And so in many cases, not all, but in many cases, it is assumed that private equity is going to economize versus exponentialize. Yeah. Economize on operating cost, then to scale, but to get those multiples up, to get their return on them, to get their return on their investment, right?
Right. Well, and that's typically what you hear with activist short selling, right?
Exactly.
It's I'm going to come in, I'm going to buy something at a discount because I of course, any of us looks to say, hey, can I find value? So I want to buy something at a discount. I want to find some economies of scale or efficiencies. I want to layer some debt on it, grow it, and then I want to exit.
Well, and again, this is, I mean, so here's something, and this is not a thesis on Rourke, but you were talking about Subway, but you look. My understanding is Dunkin' is part of the Rourke portfolio as well. I don't think there's been as much joy in the consumer's mind and positive energy around the Dunkin' brand in the last 20 years that's evolving over the last 2 to 3 to 4 years. What's interesting about Dunkin' is they got rid of the name Donuts.
Okay.
But they didn't lose the connection to the heritage. They didn't eradicate its connective tissue, if you will, in the storyline of the brand.
Right.
And so I think that one of the things about this conversation is that Woo feels good. We've got silly photos on the podcast and the website. We have fun music, that kind of stuff. Woo is a business principle that is profitable.
Right.
Because it is based on to win others over and over. You have to know what the customer wants. You have to be able to do it, and you have to do it over and over again. Mm-hmm. So should Woo be at odds with private equity? Shouldn't.
Inherently, no.
No. But how are some ways that it can be?
Yeah, I mean, I think my most immediate thought is just related to misalignment. When timing is misaligned between, let's say, for lack of a better term, the operator and the cash.
Okay.
When there's a misalignment of priorities and value, I think that's where Woo can get distracted.
Right.
Yeah. So, for example, the timeline one to me is a great example, and I can think of a number of brands where I've seen an investment from a private equity group, some slicing of some elimination of expense, and then some layering of debt, and then an exit with a business that shows as more profitable, that shows as higher revenue trend.
Right.
But the heart and soul of that business is gone.
So you could, like on the P&L, you're making more money, but
and the balance sheet looks better, right? Yeah.
But you don't necessarily have that as solid a loyalty base of customers,
right?
As you're talking about this, and this is then there's private equity involved, but as Macy's went in and bought up and acquired department stores over the last 30, 40 years, what happens is they typically would take the local regional favorite,
right,
and then ultimately it became a Macy's. There's many reasons. Like, I mean, if you're operating multiple department stores or multiple locations of businesses, it's so much easier to do it under one banner or one logo versus others, right? Yeah. I think one of the things that plays into it, the private equity, almost like private equity versus the entrepreneur, is that what tends to happen in the private equity transition is that the founder's heart and the original mission can be lost. Would you agree with that?
Yep, absolutely.
And so I think that that's one of the reasons why private equity is an easy target, is that if the massive generalizations here, but if the CFO mindset is the driving force, and there's not a counterbalance of someone championing the customer,
right?
Championing the franchisees in those situations, champion the legacy of the brand. That we talk about having a balanced scorecard. I think any business, no matter where the equities come from, has to have a balanced scorecard, and you've got to have someone champion for the Woo, champion for the brand. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Yeah. As we were sitting down, you made a really provocative statement about capital PE and lowercase PE. So I want to explore that a little bit for the benefit of our community, because I think it's really a compelling thing. Not, perhaps in our community, you're sitting here and you're looking at a deal sheet with private equity offering to buy you, blah, 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 and you've got implications and, oh my gosh, what do I do about lifelong customers and all of that, and the timeline and how much money would I make today versus separately. We're talking about lowercase PE.
Yeah, lowercase p is that whether it's private equity, a Rourke, or lowercase private equity, my Wells Fargo account. My choosing not to build a bigger house because I'm putting cash into my business, is there is private equity in every single business. There is cash that people are investing in, and we both have the foundational principle and passionate about the principle of stewardship. And stewardship is doing all you can with what you have today. And so whether it be capital P or lowercase p, I come back to the challenge as well as a reminder that we have to have a balanced lens on our business. We have to champion for financial stewardship. We have to champion for using our resources wisely. We can't do that while ignoring the impact we're having on a customer's life, because we do believe that the power of winning others over and over is when the magical intersection of like me buying something from you and getting what I paid for, and me buying something for you and you being more pleasant than other people that could sell me the same thing. But then that me buying this from you, not only do I get what's in the box, but the impact, the glow, if you will, the ripple effect of what that does in my life makes me appreciate it so much that I'm like won over, you know? And I'll give you a silly example. Do you have an air fryer at home? Okay. Hey, do you ever use the air fryer yourself? Yeah. Okay. I use the air fryer for the very first time personally about 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
Those are the freaking most amazing things in the world. Right?
Yeah. It gets used a lot in our house.
I can imagine, especially with the kids your age and that kind of stuff. All right. And so I don't know the name of the air fryer we have, frankly. I know that if something were to happen to that air fryer, I would make sure we replaced it with that exact same air fryer because of what it does in our life.
Right.
All right. Okay. It was delivered by Amazon, my guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do you see where I'm going with this? Is that whether you're capital PE or lowercase PE, your product, your experience has to do more than just like fry the chicken, but the way it works and how easy it is to move and how easy to clean and the time it saves me, it is about the impact we make in people's lives. And I think that's what those of us that are cautious around private equity have seen it gone badly. I mean, and through B2Y Creative, we have worked with brands that have been acquired from private equity, and there's pluses, there's minuses.
Sure. Yeah.
But if there's not a vigilance to continue to have an honor for the legacy relationship with your customers and to determine exactly what you want that customer to be, then it can go south pretty fast. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, certainly. Well, and I like what you were talking about, again, whether this is big PE or lowercase PE, this tension of cash and culture, right?
Every business.
Is right. And obviously a business needs to make money. It's not a charity. And so there's, whether it's a solopreneur or a, big PE fund, bought company, it needs to be a profitable business. And what we're saying, I think, Ed, is the culture component can't be sideways. Otherwise, there is incongruence with Woo principles and any private equity, either, the solopreneur private equity or big capital PE. So it's this tension of cash and culture that we're going like, how's that going to work out? And so I think in your business, the question is, well, geez, how's that going to work out?
How's it going to work out?
How are you going to remain aligned? Again, kind of coming back to the equation you started off this episode with, is we say, well, all right, we believe that customer, that long-term, lifelong customer is the most profitable customer you have. So why would you surrender that for a short-term gain? So you had something.
Yeah, well, and going to the PE persona is that we do know private equity is great about looking at operations and determining where controls can be in place, where systems can be in place. Whenever you acquire or merge, you typically streamline back office support, that kind of stuff. What tends to happen is, I think, as any company scales, private equity or not, is there tends to be more and more restrictions, more and more policies, less and less deference or ability for there to be judgment or discretion at the customer transaction. And so I want to share, let me share something that happened yesterday, and this could probably lead to a whole nother episode, but I drive an old Land Rover, and I love my Land Rover, and I know that repairs can be expensive, okay? And I could go to the dealer, or I could go to Josh at Hill Country British, okay? Yesterday, I had a little lever that, you pull so the middle seat goes down. It had been broken for 6 months. They'd ordered the part. I hadn't gotten by there. I finally was like in the neighborhood, as well as my coolant light came on yesterday morning. So I'm like, perfect day to go by there. I'd already paid for the part. Probably way too expensive for a little plastic lever, but still had already paid for it. It was served their way for me. They chose to install the lever for me. The guy at the desk, Ray, was going to do it. He couldn't figure out how to get it fully clipped in, so they pulled it into the bay, and one of the technicians did. And they topped off my coolant. They said it was low, so let's just say 3 or 4 gallons, whatever it was. No charge whatsoever.
Okay.
The way they were able to do that was because Josh owns a company, and he must have either told Ray to do it or gave Ray permission to do it, or Ray knew he could do it, okay? Discount Tire. I understand they're still probably held, I believe, as I understand it. You can go up, get free air at any time. Their systems, okay? Discount Tire, if Discount Tire was acquired by private equity and they said, look at all the money we could save by not paying labor to test people's air on the tires, what would happen?
Yeah. Or if they charge for it, right?
They charge for it. Discount Tire becomes something totally different.
Yeah.
So whether you're private equity or not, think about the things that on a transaction basis may not make sense from a financial stewardship standpoint, but on a holistic standpoint. You think my loyalty is pretty high to Josh now? It is extremely high.
Right.
And so that's, I think, our cautionary tale here is that whether you're private equity or not, you are going to be challenged today more than ever to figure out how can you cut whatever you can to create greater yield, right?
Absolutely.
I think what we're saying is be very careful what you cut and make sure you have a lens for the customer.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it'll be interesting, Ed. We started this episode talking about Rourke and Subway and where that's going.
And now I'm thinking about the BMT. Yeah. That was mine. Italian BMT?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But anyway.
Yeah, so I think the jury's out, how that's going to play out.
Yeah.
We that chain has seen, 6 years of slides and closing locations. And my guess is that Rourke bought it for a discount and is putting capital in. And we get to see, as a consumer, how that's going to play out.
And one thing about Subway is that while their unit economics are not the best in the industry, as we understand, you roll it together, they're still like a $14 billion enterprise.
Right.
I mean, and so, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. So, and to your point, we're at a time where cash is, personal disposable income is down. We talked about this in our last episode. Prices are going up, and so it feels like now more than ever, this is a time for Woo.
This is time for Woo.
And so it feels like Rourke may be positioned really nicely with Subway to really make a meaningful impact. The question is, what's going to be their focus? Is it cash? Is it culture? How are they going to let those two compete and
That's right.
and fight for share of voice? And so I think for our community, the same thing could be said for you, is in your business now, in this economy, in this culture, with the pressures you have on running the business and retaining employees and finding them and delivering your good or service well, how are you going to let that tension, the same tension that Rourke and Subway are experiencing, how are you going to let that tension play out? And are you going to succumb to maybe the short-term pressure, or are you playing the long game for the profitable, lifelong customer and for Woo? So Ed, every time we wrap up, we talk about the same thing. We say with conviction, what is it that we say?
Everyone wants Woo.
They do. And so folks, until next time, we look forward to spending time with you, and we are delighted you spend time with us today on the Wonder of Woo podcast. Take care.
Thanks. So that's it for today's episode of The Wonder of Woo. Head on over to Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to subscribe to our show. One lucky listener every single week who posts a review on Apple Podcasts will win a chance in the grand prize drawing to win a $25,000 value private VIP day with Daryl and me. Be sure to head on over to thewonderofwoopodcast.com and pick up a free copy of our gift. And please join us next time.